This is the very first live episode of Have a Drink with Chad Fox, a creative writing session. In today's video, we'll be trying out a new bottle of scotch, so stay tuned. We're going to start by listening to some music from James Allen. I'll also be putting a link to his SoundCloud in the chat. The song is called Castle in the Clouds by J.R. Allen. I'm going to start with the fun stamp to get in the festive fall season. Just had a lot of fun on Halloween. I don't know about y'all. I like to start a lot of writing sessions by reading quotes from one of my favorite books. It's just a little book I found at Half Price Books on quotes having to do with flowers. Alright, shout out to James Allen and also to Zane Easley. What up, y'all? So like I said, I like to read a little bit before I start writing. Quotes or something that inspires me. I've always loved flowers and gardening and everything about nature. Here's one by Charles Dudley Warner. To own a bit of ground, to scratch it with a hoe, to plant seeds and watch renewal of life. This is the commonest delight of the race, the most satisfactory thing a man can do. Has awesome printings of flowers. So anyway, want to go into what a creative writing session is. Creative writing is basically any fiction, poetry, metaphors, things like that. One of the things I like to do when I write, first off, is my trusty pen, every writer's tool. I use these yellow notepads. I like to fill them up with all kinds of awesome stuff, you know. Usually when I get an idea, I'll jot it down on my phone on a notepad and then return to it later in a writing session like this. But before we get started writing, let's go ahead and get out this scotch. This is a blended Scotch whiskey, Cutty Sark. We're trying it today. Leave a comment if you like to drink scotch. It's pretty good. What up, Ella? Y'all having a drink with me or what? Gonna do a double. Gotta have at least 2 fingers. Sometimes I like to put 1 piece of ice, but usually when I do a double, I like to put 2. Gotta get the ice stirring around in there a little bit. Have a little jingle down. That's incredibly smooth. Really liking that. I like to get a good smell of it while it hits my palate. So number 1 to creative writing and writing in general is to drink scotch. I know Hemingway always drank before he wrote. Of course, it didn't turn out so well for him, but you know. So as I was saying, I like to use yellow notepads, and if it's a story idea, I'll just jot down the idea. For instance, I had a science fiction idea the other day for a story called, let's see, it was How Thought Became Ruler. It's an idea I had about how humans evolve, ideas evolve, thoughts evolve. We're scared of AI evolving to a level higher than we can imagine, but in this idea, I have that thoughts could actually evolve on their own and could form a community of their own within our own collective consciousness, to the point that everyone on Earth is part of a hive mind and a hive concept and thought. So after hundreds of years of living under this one concept, still in the same scenario of, you know, governments and education and kids, just that everyone is in an equal thought of what life is. So start with that. how thought became ruler. Nice, nice. Irish whiskey, gotta love it. Zane says they drinking on some Bushmills. Hey, you got a drink? You got a drink, James, or what? So I was just gonna brainstorm some more ideas for how thought became ruler, and I had the idea that scientists and regular jobs government still exist. So scientists aren't necessarily looking for anything new because they're under a single thought concept. However, that concept still allows for scientific things and studying to happen, obviously. It would be sort of 1984-ish in that there probably would be a totalitarian system keeping anyone from rejecting that concept. And of course, in that book, they were called thought police. But in this, it's really a scientific journey where a scientist becomes a thought experimenter with thought experiments, okay? So sparkling water, that's good. That's good. Always take a moment to enjoy the finer things in life. Also, when writing, don't be afraid to just put anything out there, because everything can be edited later, and, you know, the greatest ideas come from spur of the moments, you know. So, wanting to put together a character list, one thing I love to do is use index cards. I use a ton of index cards. I love them. Sometimes I'll use the Sharpie. Gotta love it. Zane knows what I'm talking about. Anyway, so I usually use the blank side, and I'll do some character development. So my thought scientist, or my scientist who is actually decided he wants to move into thought experiments, I want to give him a name, and exactly, James, ideas are living things. That's really what this is. And, you know, when we go into deeper thoughts and concepts like the collective mind, I could really see how thoughts and living concepts could take on a life of their own, and that's kind of what I'm going for. I do need some help with naming my character, so if you guys have any ideas. It's a male in his late 30s who is a scientist in America. All the bringing together with thought in one concept didn't destroy the world. It didn't change the world. It still runs exactly the same. It just has a one cohesive idea of how things work, which we're almost there already. A lot of people want to talk about one world government. Oh, well, there's a one world government coming, this or that. It's the old world, and we've been in it this entire time, okay? countries or corporations, they all use the same codes, the same uniform commercial code. The world has been unified. Not with one concept the way I'm saying, but close to it. And this has just happened in a couple hundred years with the, in the science fiction community, it's known that the rate of technology grows so much more every year that passes that it has now sped up to the point where in just a matter of 10 years, things are going to look completely different, guys. And this story is going to kind of reflect that. I see that my mother has just joined. Mom, nice to see you. We're having a drink. Drinking scotch. Cuddy Sark blended scotch whiskey. I know my mom can appreciate fine liquors, fine spirits. So back to my story. Character name for a scientist. I don't know why it's not very nerd-like, but Drew sticks out to me a little bit. D-R-E-W, Drew. Again, I like to use note cards. I use the heck out of them. I see Deborah has joined us. Either Deborah or Brent. Good to see you on the stream. We're in a creative writing session. Science fiction. How thought became ruler. The concept is that thoughts evolved into a collective consciousness, hive mind, where the entire world conforms to one concept of life and government. All the same as we have now, like I said, because we're not that far away from that already. So anyway, our main scientist who is going to be doing thought experiments, I'm thinking Drew. I'm going to go, sometimes when you're wanting to create things, you got to pull from what you know. So I'm actually going to go with Bartholomew for the last name. Because that was the name of my bus driver in 7th grade. Drew Bartholomew. Sound like a scientist? Good enough for me right now. Anything you put down in the creative process can be changed later and can be turned into something completely different. This could be a novel, this could be a short story, Later I'll be getting into a little bit of poetry. We'll see. Basically, these segments are going to last as long as my drink lasts, so see how much we can get done. Thank you guys for being here and checking this out on my live stream. James Allen, Zane Easley, Ella, Sherry, Deborah. So we have our character here, Drew Bartholomew. It's going to be our main character for now. Let's just write main character. And again, note cards, love them. I'm going to go ahead and write just a numbered list of the story. I'm going to do a 5-numbered list of just events that may happen. It's just an overall description of maybe where I want the story to go. If you've studied the art of storytelling at all, Joseph Campbell, who was a great researcher and author who wrote on comparative mythology, he actually cracked the code for the story, the myth, the great myth and story and storytelling. And Hollywood actually uses that today. It's called the hero's journey. And it typically has 12 parts to it that begin with, meeting your hero and him going through trials and tribulations. In the end, he brings the elixir of life back to the people, it's a format, and it's great for storytelling. But today we're just going to use 5. So we're going to start with collective mind. So there's going to be probably a singular event in this story where thought reaches that threshold of it becoming more than just thoughts and living things, as James said. So in the chat there. So there'll probably be an event where the collective mind becomes a hive in its concept. So a hive mind. So that's number 1. So number 2, there's going to be a reaction. We're going to have a reaction from this because while it's something that probably will have an event that causes it, it is going to be a process where people are going to have to take in what's happening with their own thoughts and their own minds, and that's going to be a shock to people, you know. So there's going to be a reaction to that. If anyone has any ideas they want to throw in here, I'm open to suggestions. We're just going through this. I actually just had this idea yesterday, I believe. A lot of times ideas hit me out of nowhere. I mean, some people, they sit down like tonight at 8 o'clock with their drink and they plan brainstorming and ideas. Ideas hit me a lot, you know, when I'm just on my way to the post office or, you know, things like that. So number 2, there will be a reaction by the people, right? The hive minds are going to come together and everyone's going to have a moment of peace, right? Almost like biblical, where, you know, after Armageddon, things get brought into peace through, you know, through the bad guy. We won't say his name. So number 2 is that reaction, and how people are gonna behave after that point is gonna change. So behavior. So once people reach this concept where their thoughts have actually taken over their own ability to add to this, their thoughts are going to, you know, it's not going to be the police or the government who's the totalitarian system. It's going to be the thoughts themselves, right? It's going to be this collective mind that just takes over, and everyone just kind of follows suit because they believe it in their mind, because it's their own thoughts, but at the same time they may decide, like us having thoughts today, we all have thoughts that we don't necessarily would ever do, or things that are good and bad that we play these things out in our head and we have these thoughts. Well, at the same time, when the collective thought is telling you this is the way it is, at the beginning people are going to be, you know, reacting to that, but then their behavior is going to eventually even out and they're going to follow that hive mind, you know. So then we're going to have a period of peace, right? Number 3, a period of peace. But within that peace, people are going to have a lot of time to question things the way we question our own thoughts. But, you know, over, let's say, 300 years, you know, when the collective mind started, we could even give a date. When do you think the collective mind should take over? I'm thinking 2020 is next year. I'm thinking 2030. By 2030 is when this happens. And this could coincide with the technological event as well. James says, do the thoughts have an origin? Seems like their evolution would be an interesting part of the story. That would definitely be a preamble to the whole story. You know, is it one person that started the thought and it spread? Or was it multiple people having a thought to a majority, and it's the majority that was really the origin and the reason for it to be condensed into one concept, right? So I'm thinking 10 more years. That might sound far-fetched, you know. When Back to the Future came out, this was the future, right? But if you look at technology and computing power, like the like the scientists have told us now, even computing power is progressing to a point that now we're computing quantum units. You know, so things have really gone out of control just in computers. Well, if human thought created these computers, then thought could have an even bigger evolution than technology or AI, right? Zane brought in time traveling. Time travel is definitely a big part of science fiction that I love. I personally believe that time travel is a concept that could become real, you know? I don't know if anyone here is familiar with with Arizona and the Grand Canyon, where they found a cave in the early 1900s or 1800s, late 1800s, I can't remember, but they found a cave system, and inside the cave system they found, number one, Egyptian artifacts. But what was really interesting about the find is they didn't just find Egyptian artifacts. They found Mayan artifacts, Egyptian artifacts. They found artifacts that it appeared that the Egyptians were using as worship tools that were even older, from a pre-Diluvian age. You know, like Atlantean type myths and stories. So I actually had a dream once where I was discussing time travel in the dream, kind of with myself as an inner narrative, and I kept seeing people with wings. Any thought in this dream I had having to do with time travel had people with wings, and it was strange. And then a few days, this is how connected things can be, and this is why I love the idea of a collective mind story. Just a few days later, a synchronicity, a friend of mine who is a psychic contacts me, and I tell him about the dream, and he puts it to his other friends who are also in the spiritual movement, and they say, "Oh, you mean the wing makers?" Okay, so then I start researching the wing makers, and I find this article on the cave system in the Grand Canyon, where all these artifacts that don't fit the time period, and even ones older than we really know of, which artifacts like that are put in a category called forbidden archaeology or esoteric archaeology. But anyway, back to it. So Zane says, like, they came from the past to the future with these radical ideas. So if we were to travel to the future and whoever's traveling to the future represents the human race, right? Represents Earth. Maybe even America. You know how centered we are in our country here. But, so at that point, the ideas have started, right, collectively, and those ideas are now put together in a dossier that these time travelers could maybe bring to the future, where the future maybe is even more progressed, and thoughts maybe spread faster in the future, right? So these time travelers from the past bring these thoughts that have been well forgotten into the future, and they spread like wildfire, right? It's a good idea. It's a good idea. Sherry says, small creatures that walk alongside of us. Not sure how I would weave that into the whole collective mind scenario, because basically the thought is we're still in a world like today where there is oppression, there is what we think is free thought, when really we're in a thought prison, some of us, you know. But in a different world, see, I love the creative part of this, you know, because this could go so many places. This could go to interdimensional time traveling. This could go to off planet, to another world, where maybe there's a myth that there's these small creatures from another planet who have a connection with Earth, and that they're the ones sending these signals to us that create this hive thought and concept, right? Maybe. Like James says, what we're told as the official timeline of how things have progressed on the planet is way off, guys. It's way off. The official story, there are so many archaeological finds that break that threshold, that constantly push how far back it all started. You know, we started with it this date, but then we pushed it a little further because, well, we found out this now. Well, thousands of years have passed and we found this out, which pushes the timeline back a little more, right? Well, now we have science, carbon dating, all these things. Well, trust me, you don't have to trust me, but there's a narrative out there, okay, that we are in a set time frame, and there is no set time frame. And the whole creative writing thing, there's no frames. There's no things to keep us. That's the whole concept here of a hive concept. We don't have that. We have complete free thought, right? So that is what the story is going towards, is at one point, could the world not have free thought at all? And even now, just to bring this up, you know, like I said earlier, could we maybe be in a thought prison now? And that our thoughts are only the things that we read, that we see on television, right? That we're in this singular concept because we're working with what's being provided. Something to think about. James mentioned a ruin that shows architecture and stonework that's just way out of the time concept that we're given again. But okay, so there, number 3 is a period of peace. My ice is melting. I like that. I actually like when the ice melts into the scotch a little bit. It really makes it smoother. I love the buzz that scotch gives you, and it really helps get the ideas flowing. It gets me loose, you know. Like I was nervous to make this video, but now I feel great, and all my homies are here, all my loved ones, so this is good. So we have the collective mind, the singular event that causes the hive mind. We have the reaction because people still think. They're just now giving a concept, you know, almost like a format. So a lot of people need a format, okay? People cling to concepts. So the majority of people are going to love when their own thoughts are telling them that it is all formatted one way and everyone's on the same page, right? That's going to create the period of peace, right? So how much time has passed between 1 through 3? Started in 2030, you know, I'm going to say there's 300 years of peace. So, and 50 years of transition. So 350 years from 2030, basically. So, you know, 2380, the year 2380 is where number 5 and the conclusion of the story will come in part. So after a period of peace is when we're going to have thinkers. Thinkers are after this 300-year period of peace and everything going great and people still being able to think, but only within the concepts that they're given. You know, they're given rules by their new ruler, which is thought itself, but they start, you know, wanting more, right? Everyone wants more. People are given all kinds of things, but they want more always, right? I'm loving this scotch, by the way. If everybody likes how this is going on, we're probably going to do a weekly segment with this. Every couple of months, I'll get a new bottle of scotch, and we'll give you the word on how good that one is, right? So Sherry says, from the past, but in our future, and I'm guessing she means having the creatures that are smaller than us not come from off planet, but actually come from the past, right? And maybe we still have that connection these millions of years later to these past creatures who had these thoughts that originated the thought of we should all be brought together in a one world concept, right? So number 4, thinkers. Great, James. Appreciate you being here. I'm going to play a couple of your songs at the end, and I'm going to provide links. Also, y'all, you'll be able to access this video. Even though it's live, you can always come back. I'll change the description, and I'll provide all those links in the description as well as the comments. So, yes, so now we're on to thinkers. So these thinkers, you know, are going to be scientists. Obviously, it doesn't have to be scientists only. Everyone can break through. Anyone can have a breakthrough. But in this story, our main character, Drew Bartholomew, is going to be a scientist. He's not going to be a scientist who is highly, you know, who is high up in the ranks. He's going to be a little guy who starts with his first thought experiment, and from there, that thought experiment opens him up to a really complex scientific method where he will advance in ranks just because of that, but he will also draw suspicion from the hive mind, right? So we got our thinkers and our scientists. And like I said, the story of the hero's journey usually has about 12 points. We're narrowing it down to 5 because we're just starting this idea, you know. We're just putting words down here, thoughts down. Using all our ideas here. There's no bad ideas. There's no bad words here. So on number 5, let's let's put the conclusion here. So let's say the scientist makes a huge discovery with his thought experiments, and because the hive mind has been controlled for so long, he's able to break through the media and these things, because they still exist, with his thought experiments, because of his advancements in his area of expertise in science. And, he'll now be up there with people that, get the Nobel Prize in this or that. But what it will do, once he breaks the real thought concept, there will be a cognitive dissonance, right? The hive mind itself won't be able to believe the facts that are right in front of them. So that's the problem that the scientist has to overcome, and the elixir that he brings back to the people is how to be a free thinker again, but still have peace, still have the world run as the world, and there be a conclusion that will basically be compromised. So in this little brainstorming, we've got a idea of a story called How Thought Became Ruler, where a collective thought turns into a hive mind, through the collective consciousness, where everyone latches on to this concept that there is a format for everything. Okay? And there'll be reactions where there will be some dissonance and terrorism and these things, and a resistance to the idea, but eventually the format will be so complete to them, the thought will be such a working thought that it'll change their behavior, and will create the period of peace, number 3. So 1, collective mind; 2, the reaction of behavior from that; 3, the period of peace that it makes, and then number 4 will be when the great thinkers and scientists, after 300 years, have labored over what it means to have a format and what could exist outside of the format, right? The format works, but don't we get to decide what's outside of the format, right? Which will eventually, number 5, which we have conclusion with compromise, but really there will also, within the hero's journey, something will happen to Drew Bartholomew that really tests him. That he will be, in movies, the way they write these stories to the hero's journey, someone is near death, right? Or even you think they're dead. And you're like, where the heck does the story go from here, right? Well, somehow the hero overcomes death, right? Overcomes the threat of death, and returns with more fury than before, obtains the elixir of life, and brings it back to the people. And there's that ending, right? And there's that great story. So anyway, creative writing, we like to just bring thoughts like this together, concepts like this, but we're going to move on now to some poetry writing. I'm going to read from one of my favorite books, The Southern Poets. We here in the South like to write. So it's another old book that I love. The newspaper clipping from 1916 in it. This was written in 1913. Some of the names on here are Edgar Allan Poe, John Shaw, William Gilmore Simms. Some of you will know the name Albert Pike. He wasn't just a Confederate general and Freemason. He was also a poet and a great writer. So anyway, let's go ahead and it actually gives a little brief introduction on Edgar Allan Poe. So I know there's a lot of Edgar Allan Poe fans there, so let's just give it a little read, huh? In the beginning of the year 1809, David Poe and his wife Elizabeth, the daughter of a successful actress, arrived a few years before from London. They were regular members of a company playing at the Federal Street Theater in Boston. This son of General David Poe of Maryland had in December 1803 abandoned the law of his office and his uncle Augusta, Georgia, to join in company of actors then playing in Charleston, and in January of 1806 had married a member of the troupe, a widow, Miss Elizabeth Hopkins, born Arnold. During the first Federal Street engagement, January 19th, the second of their sons, who was to be named Edgar, was born. On the death of the mother in 1811, succeeding that of the father, Edgar was adopted by Mr. John Allan, and was thenceforth known as Edgar Allan Poe. When Edgar was 6 years old, his foster father went to reside in England, and he was entered as a pupil in the Manor House School in Stoke Newington. There he made some progress in the study of Latin and of French, and was fond of outdoor sports. When Mr. Allan returned to Richmond in 1820, Edgar was put under private tutors until in 1826 he was prepared to enter the University of Virginia. The records of the university show that Poe was a successful student of languages, and that no fault was found by the authorities with his conduct as a student. But Edgar fell into the bad habits of using intoxicants, which can happen to anyone, guys. We all know those people. Some of us could have been one at once. Of gambling in Charlottesville, and of running up debts with the tradesmen. The amount of the indebtedness was large, and Mr. Allan refused to pay all the bills that were presented. Edgar was not allowed to return after the Christmas holidays, and was given a desk in Mr. Allan's office. Feeling himself disgraced and looking on office work and drudgery, Poe broke away, went to Boston, and enlisted into the United States Army. So if you didn't know that, Edgar Allan Poe was in the United States Army. Under the name of Edgar A. Perry. As an enlisted man in the artillery arm of service, he was on duty in Boston near Charleston at Fortress Monroe. While at Fort Moultrie in the Gold Bug, he became familiar with the scenes. I kind of read that a little funny. Anyway, he became familiar with the scene there, and he was diligent in his attention to duty, and by the fact that being promoted to be sergeant major. Mr. Allan, soon after the death of his wife, secured Edgar's discharge and had sufficient influence to bring about his appointment to the military academy at West Point. Poe did not find his duties as cadet at all pleasant. He was reserved in disposition and made few friends. The routine of military school life became more and more distasteful to him, until at length he deliberately brought about his expulsion. So Edgar Allan Poe was adopted. He joined the military. He did not like the military, and later became a proficient writer. Love it. Any questions? Anybody? How y'all feeling? Looks like I got about 5-10 minutes left on my drink. So we're going to go into a poem. Edgar Allan Poe wrote many things. Some were poems, but with poetry you have rhyme and you have free form. I like to do both. When writing, I also like to have a dictionary close, obviously. Gotta love Webster's. But sometimes for the creative process, I like to look up words, you know, to get ideas. Since we were just talking about Poe, let's go to the letter P. Let's find some words here. Got a lot of grim words, plague, and you know. Maybe thoughts could even be seen as a plague, right? Or an infection. A poinsettia, gotta love that for the festive season. Possession. Love horror. We love the possessed. So pother, P-O-T-H-E-R. Pother means confusion, bustle, to make commotion. So I'm going to use that in a poem here that rhymes. So when I rhyme, I usually use the ABC method, okay? So I'll go through the letters of the alphabet starting with A with the rhyme word. So let's say pother will be the main rhyme word. So I'll start with A, which if I don't come up with anything, I'll go to B, pother, bother. So let's write some rhyming words down here. Pother, bother, B, C, coppers, yeah, copper, copper, you've got offer, which is an O. Sometimes I'll skip ahead, you know, sometimes things just come to you. So, you know, you'll go through B, bother, C, copper, D, can't think of anything. I'm going to put father because when you rhyme and you're doing a free, even though it rhymes, it's not so much free form, but you can break barriers, you know. So I'm being told I have no sound at the moment. Just see what's happening. Okay, Sherry, looks like Deborah has sound, so maybe that's on your end. Does everyone hear me? I just noticed Adam has joined us. Adam from Dallas, what up? Zane says he can hear fine, so Sherry, the no sound is on your end. Alright, so I was just going through how I rhyme and how I find rhymes. I start with the ABC method and I go through, you know, A, B, C, D, and look for rhyming words. So, like, let's say your rhyming word was band, you would start with A, and, B, band, C, can, D, dand, E, F, Fran, G, H, hand. Anyway, but we're on pother. So far I have pother, bother, copper, offer, and father. Not much, Adam. Adam, good to see you here, man. Been a long time. Alright, so I'm going to put slaughter. Got to have a little controversy in there. Put potter. Even though our one word is pother, we're going to add potter into that. Okay, so what I like to do is I'll take these rhymes here and I'll just start trying to come up with some creative things to rhyme with here. So for instance, I'm going to start with why do I bother? Has the video cut out for you guys? It appears to be rolling on my end. Anyone else having issues with audio or video right now? Alright, looks like we're good. So on our poem, we start out with the idea, why do I bother? Which I'm going to make the second rhyming word. Usually when I make a rhyming poem, I like the first words to not rhyme, the second word rhyme, the next one not rhyme, so on and so forth. Okay, some people are having some trouble. Well, it looks like we're mostly good in the chat here. So, I like to throw things like life and love into the mix with poetry. Beauty, things like that. So I have, when loving, why bother? Love is just another offer. So you can see how I started with a line that didn't rhyme, a line that rhymed, a line that didn't rhyme, and a line that rhymed. So we're going to add a little to this. So I added the line like creation and the potter, as in the potter who creates us from clay, right? So we've got, when loving, why bother? Love is just another offer, like creation and the potter. Just here to fill the coffers. Copper is, you know, the tidings and money side of religion. So let's add a little bit of controversy here. So our original word pother, I do not like, which is fine. We're going to cross that out. But I'm also going to add the title, Yours Truly. So we have a rhyming poem, guys. Yours truly. When loving, why bother? Love is just another offer. Like creation and the potter, just here to fill the coffer. Yours forever, just another lover for the slaughter. So I just came up with this with my rhyming technique of going through the ABC rhymes of the different words. And we've come up with this. All right, now I think we're going to save the non-rhyming for next time. I think we've been on here for a minute. Getting down to the end of my drink here. I'm going to end this with some shout outs. Shout out to James for the awesome music. Going to be playing some tunes of his in a second. Shout out to Zane Easley, one of my best friends. Shout out to Deborah, who has been like a mother to me. My own mother, Sherry, who is the most awesome mother of all time. Ella, been awesome. Hope you're doing well. Hope y'all are doing well in California. Hope y'all got something out of this creative writing session. Next time we'll go through some things like non-rhyming poems. We'll maybe go a little more. Maybe we'll take this 5-point idea on this science fiction story and run it through the 12 steps of the hero's journey. And I'm going to be signing out here. Just going to leave y'all with a little bit of tunes. This is Polymorphic by J.R. Allen. I'm going to be leaving the links to his SoundCloud in the chat as well as in the description after I finish here. Feel free to watch this anytime. It will be saved on my author page. And James is a very awesome guitarist, by the way. James lives in Austin, Texas. He's a local musician, y'all. My friend Zane is also a musician. I'm a musician. And Adam is also a musician. Talented rapper. Shout out. Next time I'll give a full review on Cuddy Sark blended Scotch whiskey. For now though, I thought it was really pleasant. Real nice buzz.
Just see the light. Know that you're my world, and we're gonna have a hell of a night. Ooh, yeah.
So it looks like I'm gonna have to put the link to James' SoundCloud in the description after. I can't get my phone to copy at the moment. We're going to go ahead and wrap this up with my last sip. Been a pleasure. Until next time.